Hi, welcome back. Today we start new techniques in order to build classes from scratch. We'll start with inheritance. So today we're going to start by looking back at our example of a class to store books. So we've used this a lot. Today though, I want to store some children's books, things like Goodnight Moon and Bunnicula. The problem is those books don't just have an author, they also have an illustrator. But a lot of the other books in my collection don't have an illustrator. So my goal here is to create a subclass that specifically stores information about children's books. So we'll start the same way, public class children's book. The trick here is this new keyword we'll be working on today called extends. By doing extends book, basically I lock the two classes together. So children's book will inherit all these characteristics that we have from book. So let's compile, make sure I've typed in everything correctly. Okay. Very first thing we need to do is create a new variable, private string illustrator. Now, you might be wondering, what about the title, the author, the year published, all of that information? By doing this word extends right here, children's book inherits all of those characteristics. So it automatically already has a title, an author, a year. That's the major advantage with inheritance. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. I can just start from, okay, I need an illustrator, and then move on from there. Let's go ahead and create a constructor. And for our default constructor, we're just going to set the illustrator to be unknown. So over here we've got a runner class, and we're just going to we'll call the first one b equals new. And we'll print b out to the screen. Okay. And when we run this, we didn't add a title or anything else. So basically we're getting none as the title, the author's unknown, and then it's telling us 1900, and it's the first book in our collection. So if you remember, in book, we have this toString method that we set up so that every time we printed out the book, we got certain information. So it should print out the title, the author, the year published, and the book ID. So what's happened here is we do not have a toString yet in children's book. So when I print, basically what happens is Java looks through children's book and says, nope, there's no toString. So it hops up to this parent class book and pulls the toString from there. Let's add a second constructor and we can see how this works. So public. Obviously I want to be able to add more information about my book. So string T for title, A for author. We'll pass in the illustrator and the year. Now, because I have this set up, first thing I want to do is go ahead and set up some constructor chaining here. So we're going to call this, and we'll pass in none since we don't have a title in the default constructor. Pass in unknown for the author, unknown for the illustrator, and we're defaulting everything to be 1900 if we don't have that information. Okay. Now again, the advantage here is I don't necessarily need to go through and set all these variables. Instead of using this, we're going to use a keyword called super. And I'm just going to pass through the title, the author, and the year straight up to my book class. It can handle all of that. And then illustrator, since that's specific to this class, can be handled locally. So let's go ahead and add some information here in our runner class just to see what happens. So Goodnight Moon, which is by Margaret Wise Brown. The illustrator is Clement Hurd. and it was originally published in 1947. So we compile, and now when we run this, we get all this information. So Goodnight Moon, Margaret Wise Brown, 1947, and this is the first book in our collection. The problem here is we're not seeing the illustrator. So let's go back to children's book, and we're going to create a toString method now. It should be public, and it returns a string. Now again, I don't want to completely reinvent the wheel. I already have my toString pretty well worked out inside of my book class. So I can return all right, so we're compiling. And when we run over here now, notice we've got Goodnight Moon, the author, the year, and then Clement Hurd is added onto the end. So I've taken advantage of the fact that I already had my toString all worked out, and I just needed to add this extra piece of information. That's the major advantage to using inheritance, is you're not recreating a whole bunch of code. I can set up what's called a parent class, and then by extending it, I set up a child class. The child class inherits all the information from the parent class and then can add some new features.